Hi, Chattanooga Film Festival. It's Chris Dortch, the festival director, and I am back with 75% of my voice and an incredible panel of guests who, much like myself, are all people that horror and music have meant a lot to throughout our illustrious careers and lives. And honestly, this was just an excuse to get some people that I dearly love together to talk about two great tastes that we think taste great together. And that is, of course, sort of the relationship that horror and music have. And, you know, horror and music have a long and storied history, as we all know, from like the iconic stabs of Bernard Herrmann's Psycho shower scene to the the classic Universal horror film scores to the music of Goblin. Like horror is something that has often been defined for me by music. And as we kick things off tonight, I'd love to have all of our panelists. Actually, I can kind of try to do a because you guys don't know what order you're appearing in on my. So I think it's always really awkward when people toss it off the Zoom and no one knows who's next. So I'll say first is Erica Scoggins, a deeply talented filmmaker and musician who is, I'm proud to say, an alum of the Chattanooga Film Festival with her incredible short, The Boogie Woman, who played at our Black Magic Masquerade the other night with her ephemerock, goth as fuck, incredible, hypnotic new musical project, Red Jean, which I would encourage you to check out their Bandcamp page after this. Next is my dear friend and ride or die homie, Mark Covino, who, apart from giving the world one of the greatest music documentaries ever made in a film called A Band Called Death, Mark is also the producer of a terrific short that's playing this year that you still have time to watch called Fetal Position. And I recommend you do. If you saw a young man with a fetus puppet all the fuck over our festival, just making it have adventures through the weekend, that was Joseph, the director. And I have to say, I derived a lot of joy from seeing that. Like during the shittiest part of the boat party where we were still trying to figure out the logistics, I looked over and Joseph was just making the little fetus dance, and it just made my heart grow a little. So thanks for that. Next, we have Pretty Hate Machine and Crazy Sexy Ghoul from one of our absolute favorite new podcasts, The Late Night Ghouls. We love you guys very much. Brandon Lane is sitting there next to Liz. Brandon's the genius behind Silent Horror, who also were a part of our Black Magic Masquerade and have songs about so many things that are near and dear to my heart. It's fucking absurd. Like any gentleman that would compose a ballad in the honor of the creature from the Black Lagoon and House on Haunted Hill just needed to be a part of this panel. And finally, Jamie, the filmmaker and the genius, one of the geniuses behind a collective of, I think, some of the coolest folks on earth, Lovecraft, the director of the short film Tell Alice I Love Her this year. And I think, honestly, Amanda couldn't join us today, but what Lovecraft are doing is, I think, making the worlds of music and horror like something that are once again, becoming kind of relevant to the hearts and minds of folks. And it's just something that we really want to fan the flames of and make sure that that's another Bandcamp page that you check out after this is over. You will not be disappointed by all the incredible music and collaborations you find there. And to kind of kick things off, I'm curious, we were talking about this informally before we began, but I'm curious if there is a horror movie for each of you or a piece of music associated with a horror film that is one that sort of sticks in your memory as being, a first one that meant a lot to you personally. Like Mark and I were kind of talking, and Brandon, we mentioned this too, for me, the Demon Knight soundtrack was kind of a gateway drug into a lot of things. It like taught me about bands like Sepultura or the Gravediggers, and like really, really kind of set me on a path toward discovering more extreme music and discovering more soundtracks that had to do with horror. And I love it a lot. So I'm curious if any of you have a favorite record or a favorite horror score. And it's okay if they're from the far fringes. You want to go first, Mark?
Yeah, me?
Yeah, sure. Fuck it.
Sure. I mean, well, Return of the Living Dead's my kind of gateway.
Good one.
I mean, it's just too many great bands, songs to really say. It's just
You're so right about that. That's where I discovered the Cramps, legitimately. Surfing Dead. Like, I've always really wanted to start a Cramps tribute band called Cream of Nowhere, but that's never happened because no one will join that band with me. And of course, 45 Grave and Party Time and so many fucking jams on that. That's a great pick.
This is one of the first times I saw a horror film where almost every single scene was led by a song.
You're so right about that. It was just completely like packed, and it's really like it really like the whole this isn't a costume, this is a way of life thing. Like that was like I saw that film before Decline of Western Civilization, so that might have also been like one of my first doses of like punk rock in cinema, and that movie fucking just means the world to me. That sense of humor, everything from You Need a Medical Supply on down the line is just like ingrained in my soul. Erica, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like my foray into non-mainstream movies was Lost Highway by David Lynch.
Yeah.
And I sought out that movie at the VHS rental place in my hometown because I knew that Trent Reznor was involved in the in
That's
the
very much
score.
how a lot of us discovered David Lynch, truly. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And I think it went to a deeper place though because that movie's so layered and complicated and there are a lot of clues in the music that, you know, like something wicked this way comes is one of the names of the pieces by Badalamenti in there, and then there's the Ramstein.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
God,
there's
that also that Lou Reed "This Magic Moment" fucking
yeah,
cover is just stuck in
amazing.
my brain forever. Such a
Yeah,
great. I
and
remember. Go ahead. Sorry.
the Ramstein song that's in there is like, which Ramstein, God, but used so well in that movie. But it's a song about like you know, oh my God, I'm blanking on his name, Eurydice and
Yeah,
Orpheus and Eurydice, and
Orpheus. Yeah,
about music and like bringing your wife back from the underworld. And there's that it's like points to the myth of the movie itself. So I loved how all these different elements were like part of the reading of the film. And I love movies that have music that is part of the narrative and not, you know, a great score is a great score, but like Easter eggs in the music is a huge draw for me.
oh, 100%, 100%. That's such a great example too. Lynch and Badalamenti's entire relationship and the things that they did, and I think it's worth bringing up. I mean, obviously, it's probably, I don't know. I guess it's fair to consider Twin Peaks horror because I can't remember getting the
Yeah,
shit scared out of me by
Yeah.
anything as much as Fire Walk with Me did the first
yeah,
fucking time I watched it.
totally.
Like truly terrifying, and the way that music is used there is incredible. Pretty Hate Machine and Brandon. What do you guys think? What's a favorite for you, or one that pops into mind as being kind of a gateway drug for you?
You go first.
Up to you.
The first that I can remember, like being younger, is I'd always go rent Jason Takes Manhattan because it's got that Darkest Side of the Night by Metropolis.
Yeah,
That
100%.
song, like, it hooked me, and like I was like, oh my God, and like I'm 38 years old, and every time I take a shower, you bet your ass it's on. Like I mean, like it's just one of those songs.
Very true.
But I'm gonna throw in Sleepaway Camp 2 as well.
Oh,
Sleepaway
yeah.
Camp 2's got
Hey,
some
and Bruce
bangers on it.
Springsteen's sister also,
Yeah.
Pamela, involved. So definitely some musical
Yeah.
links there.
So I'm definitely a Demon Knight soundtrack person. Like that, like you, that was my gateway to Sepultura and Machine Head. You know, that's
Sure.
how I discovered Pantera. That's how I discovered metal at a very young age. But if I backtrack, what sticks, this bringing it back to Badalamenti, what sticks in my head the most as a young child was Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and Dokken.
Dawkins, 100%. I wanted that. Which of us didn't want that skeleton guitar in our lives?
Yeah,
So I was
just
like, I'm going to save up for one.
ledge and bust
Surely I
out of
can.
the wall somewhere. Yeah, like that just sticks in my head so heavy. That would be probably my favorite.
Also, like the cover of Dawkins' Into the Fire record was like something that I remember just being like, is that Freddie's hand? Is this a time? Like, I don't know. So, what about you, Jamie?
I guess for me, I mean, there's a million songs that I
Sure.
can't get out of my head from horror movies, but for me, if I reach back into like what really early on got into my head and made me realize that music alone could kind of creep me out, is probably from the Lucio Fulci zombie series.
Ooh,
Like-
such an amazing pick.
Yeah, because you've got this guy Fabio Frizzi, who I don't know if I'm saying his name right. It kind
Yeah.
of was my intro as a kid because I'm like sneaking all these movies. It made me discover synthesizers like that as a thing.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
And there's like this ultra violence and weird, crazy stuff. And the soundtrack is just like a weird symphony of stuff. It never really starts going. It never like gets hard rock. It's just weirding you out as you're watching people get torn apart. And it never left me. Just this like meow, meow. And it's also really long songs that just go. So I love that stuff. And those movies really kind of got in my head. early on, and then also showed me how like the music doesn't have to exactly match. In fact, that can weird you out more. It can be scarier if the music is kind of staying calm and being like, this is reality now, keep your eyes open. And similarly, those movies don't cut away. Like Fulci as a director is like, here's the scene, watch it play.
Watch the splinter get closer to the fucking eyeball. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are certainly crescendos in the music and the pacing of it, but a lot of it, particularly the main theme of that movie, is just like laying out a bizarre landscape that I really, really love. So yeah, that would be the one I go to in terms of like earliest memories of music-driven horror getting inside my head and not leaving.
What about you, crazy sexy ghoul?
Oh,
are you?
I think she's muted.
Kim, are you on mute? I think.
Uh-oh.
I'm having microphone trouble. Can you hear me?
There we go. We can hear you.
Cool. I had that working before, and then it decided it didn't want to work anymore. But
I did that as well. I decided I don't want to work anymore.
Me too.
Yeah. Fuck it. So.
But I enjoy subtlety as well. But my pick was definitely not subtle, and probably the song I hear in my head whenever I'm having a manic episode, which is all the time. But Jerry Goldsmith's intro for Gremlins, the theme song to Gremlins, is what made horror for me.
It's like anarchy, like personified, 100%.
Yes.
And also, like, I have such a special memory of like that. So, like, when I was a kid, you would go into Burger King, and it was like a thing where they got these little like storybooks for Gremlins that had a 45 and just a little chunk of the Goldsmith score. Like, there were the books that were like, when you hear the sound of the chime, turn the page for a massively edited version of the Gremlins plot that does not involve the microwave or blender seat. You know, so that's such a good pick. Like, if anybody ever asked me to like distill the essence of what I hope CFF is into like one scene in a film, it's always the bar scene in Gremlins with one literally just like fucking clinging on to the blades of a fan. So I love that pick.
I love it.
And I'm curious for Erica and Jamie, who, you know, you guys are actually, you know, Erica, I know you're working on a feature now, and I'd love to know if in the process of writing that feature, what do you listen to a lot of music as you write or create? Because that's something that for the soundtracking of our year and the setting of a tone for the festival is something that we do just like so many different records, like get, you know, like the score for City of the Living Dead, for example, has been randomly on in the background a lot for this year, like a lot of different stuff. So I'm curious if in the creating of your work, in the writing of your work, there's music that means something.
I make a playlist for every project I'm working on, and sometimes every character.
That's so rad.
And then I also make like a score, like what I want the score to sound like, soundtrack, and then just like thematic stuff. So my Spotify is like pretty stacked, and there's also a lot of repeat songs on every single playlist. I'm like get obsessed a little bit. But yeah, I definitely that's a huge part of the writing process for me, is like the tone and mood, and I just don't think there's a better way to set it than music, obviously. And yeah, I don't know, like I definitely am really drawn to Earth Eater right now, as an artist who's just pushing some boundaries in terms of a lot of the work she does for fashion houses. Like she'll actually do like a vocal score for a fashion show, and it's just mesmerizing and haunting. And then there's another woman that I like is on almost every project playlist for me, is Evangelista. Like she just gets this like primal womanhood that I'm going for in everything that I'm doing. So yeah, those are some big influences right now, I would say. Chelsea Wolfe, of course.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
King Woman lately has been something that's like was also just like a huge part of the soundtrack of this year for us. Jamie, I'm curious about you. Obviously, you guys are completely steeped in music at Lovecraft. Like, so I imagine that it is definitely part of the creative process. But I'm curious to know if there's any things that just, you know, stay on repeat as you're creating, or anything that specifically like was a point of influence for the creating of Tell Alice I Love Her.
Yeah, I mean, just to not like borrow any stolen valor from Lovecraft, I don't write their music. They kind of call me when it's time for visuals and props.
Sure.
So, huge shout out to them for writing songs that genuinely I could not get out of my head even before we even talked about collaborating. Like, I just want to say again, it's wonderful stuff. But yeah, absolutely, I'm listening to it all day long. I mean, in this case, we were directly trying to make a visual inspired by it, but that's how I work anyway. Much like Erica was saying, that there's a soundtrack for everything. I also find that frequently the things you were listening to when you started making it find their way to the end and end up being the thing you put on it. I mean, honestly, even in my like more corporate work, I'll make a video and have the track you were editing to. It's so perfect that the client insists that we buy it because it's so intrinsically linked to the way that you feel about it. One thing I did want to mention though is I feel like it goes both ways. Like, we find the perfect music to inspire us to make art, but also we have to find the perfect music to be able to be in our life and like feel the things of life that are then feeding us to go make art. So it's like the soundtrack for everything. In some ways, I feel like, what would I do if I didn't have music to start matching emotions for both what's in my imagination and what's right in front of me day to day,
100%. And Mark, I'm curious, obviously, creating a band called Death, I'm just curious, like, how you prepare yourself. You told the definitive story of this band, and I'm curious if throughout that project you were, obsessing on their music, or if it was something that you were, just hearing so naturally throughout the progression of the story that you weren't necessarily like listening to it on repeat. I'd love to know, like, the process of getting to know Death's catalog to kind of tell their story.
Well, yeah, when we first learned about the band and the music, there was only 2 songs out, Politicians in My Eyes and Keep on Knocking, and I listened to those on loop for days, for months. And then eventually they released through Drag City Records the full album, and that I listened to every single day. I actually the first tour they did, that we went to go film, it was a lot of ups and downs, and when I came back, I was a changed man after seeing them perform 3 times live. And I came home and I put the record on that I bought from them after that. Actually, no, I think they gave it to me. But I put the record on for my wife to listen to, and I said, I think we're about to change history. And I played that thing, and yeah, it was pretty amazing. And I also listened to a lot of the bands that influenced them, from Iggy and the Stooges and the MC5 and Alice Cooper, and I would listen to those on loop too, to kind of motivate me, because that's what motivated them when they were kids. And yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Iggy, because it honestly reminds me of the beginning of another movie that was incredibly influential to me from a tone and musical standpoint. And that's, I think, something even you and I have talked about before, Erica, which is The Hunger, the Tony Scott film, with this just incredible goth club sequence that, you've got Iggy Pop's nightclubbing. Like, first place I ever heard Bela Lugosi's Dead, a song which will like forever be ingrained upon me. And I just, I really, it's amazing how, like you were saying, Jamie, like the tone of some things can be so spooky that it brings you to places that you didn't necessarily, know that your brain was going to take you, and kind of that psychological journey. And I'm curious, for you, Brandon, you guys who have written so many songs with silent horror about, things that meant a lot to you, if there's a, something you do to steep yourself in those particular projects as you're writing your music. So it's like, I imagine a world where you've got, Creature from the Black Lagoon on an endless loop, and, just steeping yourselves in the work of Vincent Price. But I'd love to know, like, how you choose the pieces of horror that you guys have written songs about, because you also just did sort of a true crime EP, the Case Files EP, where there's like songs that are based very much on actual serial killers and things like that. So it's really neat how you guys wear your influences on your sleeves. And I'd love to know how those influences wind up turning into songs.
Very simple. American Psycho and Famous Monsters by the Misfits. We just try to rip them off, and that's it. So that's how we write songs with the music part. Is if Doyle decided to write something, we decide to write something. Dr. Shud, Jerry Allen. That's how we've always done it. And when we go to the studio, that's we will not write it unless it sounds like something that's on American Psycho or Famous Monsters. But picking the movies, it's kind of random. It's like I'll come to the guys and I'll be like, man, let's try to write this. And like I literally came up with just like one little part of Creature from the Black Lagoon. I was ripping off Lost in Space from the 90s era of Misfits.
Yeah.
And because there's this one part, it's like, to take over. And I was like, man, that sounds so killer. I wish we wrote a whole song about that. And when I came back the next day and like the Creature from Black Lagoon's wrote, I was like, oh man, that's great. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I wish I had something awesome to tell you.
No, you know what? I'm really glad you brought up the Misfits too, because that was, again, one of the very first times in my life where I could tell a band, and I could say this about the first White Zombie record, or at least the first one I heard, Los Exorcisto, not their first album, but like the samples on that record were everything from like the Music Box from Hellraiser to Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, which sent me down this massive Russ Meyer rabbit hole, which I have never emerged from. And I just I absolutely loved, you know, I know about the London Dungeon being a thing and Return of the Fly starring Vincent Price because of the lyrics of the Misfits. So that's another band that I'm like, it would have been foolish if we went through this entire discussion and didn't bring them up.
Did you see them? Did you see them here when
No,
they were with Pantera on the Trendkill tour at Star Wars?
I never
That was
got
my
to see them.
little
Yeah.
child religious experience because Rob had, during the White Zombie set, he had Fulci Zombie playing in the background. And it was the tropical island scene with the woman where she gets her throat ripped out. And I was like, what the fuck is that? I had no idea what that was. So the next day I'm at the video store hounding the video guys, like, tell me what this is. And they're like, look, kid, we don't know what you're talking about. And one of them finally told me, the movie's called Zombie, you know, here it is, whatever. And that was like my gateway into Italian horror as a very small child, was attending that concert.
Wow.
Yeah, that's incredible. Also, Erica, I want to know, you know, you said that you're a newbie musician, which I find absolutely fucking staggering and ridiculous. But I'm curious if there's any plans to score any of your own work. And I know you mentioned Earth Eater as being an artist it's been, you know, a recent influence. But I feel like what you've done, like I watched you literally hypnotize a room the other night, and that's something that I hope that will find its way into some of your forthcoming work. And it's also worth pointing out that you're a visual artist as well. And you did all those incredible, you know, scrolls and visuals for the party. I'm curious if music informs the process of your visual art as well.
Yeah, it's definitely all like I sometimes am like, wow, am I doing too many mediums because my brain feels like it's just shitting everywhere all the time. But I think how I survive it is that it's all very much in the same vein. It's like, I don't know, it's like all me, but just these different like little pathways that I can take. And the reason that I decided finally to get into music was because I've been doing sound design for my shorts, and working with like I have a vocalist in LA that I had worked with on doing just kind of this weird experimental vocal score for The Sacred Disease and The Boogie Woman. And then I would just like take all her stems and make like distort sounds from the film to make into a semblance of a score. And I always wanted to sing and write songs, but I was like, I don't know how. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm like organizing sounds. That's like what music is. So maybe I should just do it. And so I had my fuck it year last year and decided to start this thing. And like, honestly, this is going to sound weird, but I hadn't thought about scoring something yet. Like I hadn't made it that far yet. Like I'm now, you know, with the feature, I definitely want someone who can work faster than me and is like experienced, but I'm definitely thinking about doing another short and trying my hand at composing. But yeah, it's like I feel like I've had to go through these many steps, and now I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I can bring this music thing back to the film thing and see how it works. But it's encouraging to hear you say that, because I'm like, I don't know how to play music really, and then I'm like, I don't know how to compose really, but then I don't know. It comes back to this quote I love that's like, expertise is a burden to carry, but enthusiasm is a light you can take with you. And I'm like, I got the enthusiasm. I'll figure the rest of it out. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Hey, that worked for the Ramones, and they gave us Pet Cemetery, for fuck's sake. So, I think that's absolutely awesome. And
Yeah.
Jamie, I also have to know, obviously, Tell Alice I Love Her is you've been working with Lovecraft and everything, and you showed us the incredible disco skull that you have in your lab there from the Lovecraft Halloween video. You've been creating these visuals to go along with these incredible pieces of music that Deep Cuts and everybody from Lovecraft have been formulating. And Tell Alice I Love Her is, correct me if I'm wrong, the first kind of narrative project that's come from the Lovecraft camp. And I'm curious to know if there's any plans to expand it to features, or if more short films are in the work, because it felt like such a cool marriage of your sensibilities and their sensibilities. Love the short so much, and truly some of the wildest, like, animatronic like gore, like it freaked my dad out, and my dad has a very strong stomach. And so I mean that is the highest possible compliment. Would love to know what's next for filmmaking in Lovecraft.
Yeah, well, thanks for your kind words, and certainly I think that it's the beginning of something. I think for both me and Lovecraft, there's kind of this question of what comes next. I know that they have a few things behind the curtain that I don't know all the details of yet. For me, honestly, coming out of Chattanooga, I feel very inspired to kind of run.
I'm glad to hear that.
Well, both intimidated, but in the way that's like, oh, I got to up my game a little bit. Got to even go even bigger in the next one. Got to even go crazier. So there's that. And I think that I also feel very eager to hear the next music that Lovecraft comes out with. I'm sure it's going to create horrible nightmares in my brain that I'm forced to come out with. We have been just kind of as an exploration, looking into the world of VR as a kind of mid-range between filmmaking and interactivity, because VR is really good at making you terrified. And I'm kind of interested in maybe making a film that way, maybe something
That's
where
awesome.
It's kind of bridging that gap. So yeah, there's a lot coming in the pipeline. And also for me, just as a maker of many things, as you mentioned, I have a bunch of stuff in the pipeline in terms of just like spooky art creations that live in the physical world. One of which is just out of frame over here. I wish I could bring it in, but yeah, I guess to bring it back around, I'm just endlessly finding that there's a song that just takes residence, and until I get the thing that it inspires out of me, the song will not leave me alone. That it will be there until that thing comes out, and that can be sometimes over years go by. And if you're
Musical
lucky,
possession, love it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and you got to make the thing to get it out there.
Well, I think that actually gets us to right about the edge of our half hour here. And I legitimately love all of you for joining me to just geek the fuck out about this. Again, this was like just a thinly veiled excuse for me to like bring a bunch of human beings that I know have these similar touchstones and pop cultural lexicons together to like just fucking ooze our love for both music and horror. And this weekend also, it's been a joy to show a few projects that are themselves infused with very much music. We got to do a film called A Wandering Path this year about Gilead Media and sort of that collective of artists and how music, did everything from help them with their mental health to like create support systems for them. And it means a lot to me that all of you have kind of become a little support system around this festival this year and have been part of year 10 with all of your various skill sets. So it's like a Swiss Army knife with some of the coolest fucking people I've ever met, and that all are inside of it. So I just want to say one more personal thank you to all of you for being a part of this year in so many different ways, whether it be playing your music, giving your love and passion for film with live podcasts, Crazy Sexy Ghoul and Pretty Hate Machine. Mark is obviously part of our eternal family, and I have to give him credit for a few months back saying, hey, Chris, there's a podcast by Gil and Al, the creators of Bordello of Blood, that if you have not fucking listened to it, you are doing yourself a disservice, which literally evolved into this tribute that we've done this year. So just a lot of love and a lot of thanks goes out to all of you for making this year just a hair spookier than it would have been if it were just our team by ourselves. And Thanks a lot for being here, guys. And I hope to see you back at many, many additional years of this festival for as long as I stay alive, which I've got Pedialyte, so it should be a few more years.
Oh yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, thanks a lot. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Please stick around and watch a fucking bunch more movies. And join us a little later on tonight for a script reading of the never before filmed intended follow-up to Demon Knight, Dead Easy.